Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the screenwriting step-by-step project, chapter 116. My name is Glenn Gers. I am coming to you here every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, to walk you through the process of writing a script. Not the best process, not the only process, just a process I worked out in my 25-year career as a writer on movies and TV, because it seems like nobody is showing you how to write the day-to-day gritty, I'm going to try and get from scene A to scene B process. Everyone talks about the result, they talk about the great script, they talk about the perfect script, they don't talk about how you write the damn script. And I've got a lot of things to say about that, which I try to say as I work. So I let you look over my shoulder, try and give you some insight into the process in case it helps you to find your process. Because the main thing is everybody does it the way that they need to do it. Every writer is different. Every project is different. That's actually one of the most important things I think nobody teaches you. You don't just have one formula that you apply to every kind of work. You don't. Every kind of work is different. Every piece of work is different. So the only thing that I know that you can apply to all of it is your process. So I let you look over my shoulder, share my screen as I am writing a TV pilot drama script. Just chose that for random because it was shorter than a feature script. Just thought it would be a fun thing to show you how to do. So we started with the outline, did a rough draft. Now we are rethinking the outline before we do the next draft. Hello, Natasha. Hello, this is Kitschy. Hello, I write. I am glad to see you all here. It is great. Oh, there's 99 Precinct. Wonderful. Hello, hello. I'm glad to see you all here. I'm going to get to it because I have been away a bunch this week for various personal chores, errands, and appointments. So let's just get right to it. The thing we've done now is I went through the outline and I took all the notes from my first read through. I just read through the script. It's 90 pages long. It has to be 60. And every scene, I just made notes. This is what this scene should be. This is what this scene is not doing. This is a question about this scene. Hello, Larry. Now, we spent a week putting those notes into the outline so that everything is in the outline. You can use the outline as a workspace, a place to do your thinking, to write down your questions and try out some answers. And then it becomes a thing to do list. It becomes this is what I'm going to do next. I got to go through this scene and this scene and this scene. And the next thing you know, you finish this draft. So, but as I was doing that, I thought I need to show you this other thing, which I call the major moves. And that brought me to a question. Hang on, let me see if I can... Ah, there it is. Sorry about that. The camera was blocking my my view of this this document. Let me see here. All right. So, there we go. E2 said, Glenn, I just rewatched your set piece video and it got me wondering, when do you start thinking about set pieces in your script? In the outline, the first draft, or both? I'm still catching up with older sessions, so maybe you talked about this already. Sorry if that's the case, but I'm curious how your mind deals with set pieces. Is it just hardwired in now, or do you have to actively look for where and when to add them? That's from E2, and she is talking, or he, they is talking about this video. It's called Set Pieces. And what it talks about is the idea that a set piece is is what I call the intensified noticeable scenes or sequences where the promise of the project, the promise of the genre gets heightened. Where you suddenly see, like if it's a heist movie, it's the heisty scenes or the planning scenes or the scenes where it goes wrong and you have to deal with it. Whatever it is in a musical, it's the musical numbers. In a sports story, it's very often the games or the fights or the matches, whatever it is. Whatever this kind of story, and this story in particular, are trying to get the audience to see, to enjoy, those sequences where it gets most intense, where it says like, whoa, in this car chase movie, these are the car chases. These are the car stunts. Those are called set pieces. And every work that I know of, you need them. If you're doing a romantic comedy, the set pieces are very often just the times when the leads are together and the most romantic comedy-ish scenes, whatever that may be for that particular story and genre. You have set pieces. Usually they come every 10 minutes, maybe. It depends. There's no real rule. You can try and jam in a lot. You can have just a couple, but they last a long time. But the main thing is you really want to have them and you really want to be conscious of them. Hello, Rachel. The thing about set pieces is the audience is looking for them. The audience is hungry for them. They may not even be conscious that they are, but they are. When you go to a boxing movie, you want some great boxing. When you go to a Fast and Furious movie, you want a lot of cars doing insane things and Vin Diesel saying family, family, family. Whatever it is that you're going to that story for, the stuff that's in the trailer, that's the thing that you want to make sure you are delivering in really solid, exciting, satisfying, heightened sequences. So that, yes, exactly. All sorts of, when you work on a script, you should be conscious of making sure you have them and how they build. You don't want to put the best one first. So when E2 asked me how your mind deals with set pieces, is it just hardwired in now, or do you have to actively look for where and how to add them? The answer was yes. It is, for me, hardwired. I didn't even think about that. I was not thinking about it when I was working on the outline, but I was consciously saying, oh, there's a set piece. Oh, there's a set piece. So let me open up the document here so you can see it. So one of the things that I tried to do, like when I was writing it, I didn't even think about the fact that, yes, the first podcast where leading to George's death, that's a set piece. That's got to have a certain heightened feeling of mystery and thriller, fear involved, because that's one of the major elements of this series. Then we've got a sequence here. So George dies, and there's a bunch of scenes. And I mean, I kind of like ideally you have some like mini set pieces. The truth is, I think meeting Madeline is kind of a mini set piece, because it's exciting to get her character. But really, let's see, the next set piece I think is for sure when Madeline gets stoned and she starts blasting the music and Dondowski breaks in and Norman comes in and they fight. That's a set piece. That is a moment when a bunch of different theme elements for this story, certain comedy, a certain amount of fear and violence, a certain amount of unexpected twistiness to it, that's a set piece. I know that the final sequence where they get on the phone with this guy and everyone's talking, but we're having a heightened conversation. That's really all it is. It's a heightened conversation, but it's a really important set piece. Let's not forget, a set piece can be just a conversation. Famously, the opening of Social Network is a major set piece. It is, I believe, a 9-minute conversation, which is intensely long for any kind of contemporary movie, to have two people sitting and talking, and that's all it is. Two people sitting in a bar talking for 9 minutes. And in that, there's some verbal dueling going on, but there's also a sense of heightened treasuring the intelligence and the character revelations. So that's the set piece for that scene. And frankly, I had a couple of those which I wanted this to be moments when you're like, oh, these two people who have never talked before and probably should never talk have gotten themselves into a place where they need to talk, and they let things out and things change. Those are set pieces for me. Okay, so that is the first thing I wanted to talk about was just, do you need set pieces? Yes. You want to watch this video and always be conscious in your outline, in your story, where are those points where this thing it sort of takes off. It becomes something uniquely, specially itself, uniquely, specially what somebody came to this story to get. All right. So, but now the next thing I want to talk about is what I call the major moves, which is in the overview, or you can even make it its own document. I kind of did it roughly here. Now this is tricky. I'm going to have to make this a little less readable, but this is one of those things where you need to actually look at the full page, the full list. So what for me the major moves is sort of the big blocks of the story. The big they're not really acts, they're not really sequences, they're just sections mentally where a certain hunk of story is closed into. So for instance, for me, the first sequence is a major move. It's a section. Then we've got, and what I like to do, actually, what I'm going to talk about here is taking the outline. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to close the outline. Okay, I'm going to make a copy of my outline. See that? Do not ever do major surgery on a document without making a copy so you have the original in case you need it. In this case, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this new document. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to take out everything except these scene titles, okay? So this is going to be you're going to watch a bit of typing and cutting and pasting, but what I'm creating here actually is what I actually call, and we'll rename this, the scene list. Okay. This is a really useful thing you can do with my outline format. You can do it any way you want. In many TV writing rooms, they do this as what they call index cards, which they actually do on really big index cards on a big board. One thing you can do, you could also do it on the whiteboard. You know, people do that. Okay. So what I'm doing now, I'm trying to look at this story structurally, just to say, what are the building blocks? What are the pieces? What are the scenes that I'm working with here? And sometimes you just want to make a list of the scenes. All right, so this will take a few minutes. I hope you enjoy the process of cutting because it's something you don't see every day. Somebody sitting, going through their outline and cutting out all the stuff except the scene lines, the point of the scene itself. There we go. You getting all this, folks? Are you? Oh, you know what? I don't think you are, because yeah, that helps. You can see it a little better now. Okay, so what we're doing is we are creating a list of every scene in this story. I see that Natasha and this is Kitchi are discussing in the chat something about getting legal information, legal transcripts of trials. And I don't know anything about that. So I'm just going to say I would just Google it. Okay, so what we're doing here, as you can see, is now I have a document which is just every single scene in this story. Almost done. Have patience. It's a process. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to what I did here is I have made this. So this is our story. And I probably, with a little work, just with a little work, I can get these down to each to one line. So eventually you have it down to every single one of these is one line. Then you can sort of say, okay, so that's a section. That's a hunk of it. That's the Meet George dies section. Then this is the Meet Madeline section. She's got a lot of stuff coming at her. Then you got the Meet Norman and Meet the Group. And then we have Norman trying to reach Mad, and she's not going to find her. And then we get to the Madeline alone getting attacked, and Norman saving her. Then we got the night that Norman and Mad end up together. Then Norman and Madeline get closer. They spend some time together. There's a blow up between. All right, so now I can go through and get the major moves. All right, so the first sequence is George. Second sequence is Meet Madeline. dealing with cops and Xena. Okay, then meet Norman and group to file plan. So now, okay. Okay, so now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are basically 9 sections. Was George a killer who was killed by the serial killer of the show? George was not a killer. George is just a guy. George is just a guy who is a podcaster, actually. George is a podcaster who is trying to do a true crime podcast. And unfortunately, that has infuriated the killer. And that means he becomes a victim of the killer. Except it turns out, as we will reveal towards the end of the season, the killer didn't, well, the killer just says it now. The person who actually killed him was Xena. Okay. Okay, great. I'm glad that this is, yeah, I'm really doing processy stuff here, but I want to try and make this really clear, because this is one of the most, I think, useful things you can do with your outline, with your thinking. Other than the writing stuff, it's one thing, but the stepping back and going, wait a second, what is the shape? What is the ride I am taking my audience on here? That's really important, to step back. It's like sometimes you're doing the detailed, I'm going to make this line funny stuff. And then sometimes you need to step back and say, what's the big picture? What's the ride that you're strapping the audience in for in the first scene? And that where are they going up? Where are they going down? Where's the twists and the turns? That's a planning thing that informs all the little decisions. Without that big picture, you can't really make good decisions, because you're just going on impulse, moment to moment, beat to beat. And a lot of people write that way, and it's cool. Maybe there are times when you're going to write that way, but to be a professional, if you're a professional, this is required. They actually it's called breaking the story. When you are working on a TV series of any kind, streaming series or anything, the showrunner gets the writing staff together and they sit in a room and they do what I'm doing here, but they all do it together with the showrunner guiding it, saying, all right, we need this sequence to be bigger, or what about this question? And they all come up with answers and talk. The showrunner then says, that choice is the one we're going to make, and they put it on the board. They put it on a whiteboard, usually. And sometimes they put it on a cork board, but the point is they're constantly keeping the big picture in mind, so that when you get to the question of how is George going to behave, or what does Madeline feel about George, it's serving the story, because the audience is trusting you to do that. The audience is trusting you to have a reason for everything that goes in. It's horribly artificial. it is a lie in every sense of the word. Art is a lie because it gives meaning and order to the chaos of life. But that is exactly what art does, and that is your job. If you choose to do art that is more representative of the chaos, cool, but you should be doing it consciously, not just because you don't know how to do anything else. So, so now I made a copy of the outline and I broke it into sections. Like I said, what I would eventually do is see about cleaning this up. I don't know how much I'm going to do that while you're watching. But the point about this is to say, oh, yeah, like this whole section here, from the beginning through then, is about the fact that Madeline and Norman have been pushed into this weird introduction for bizarre reasons, and now they're ending up in bed together and they're going to make love. That is what all of these scenes are about, except for there's a little bit about Xena coming, which is just it's like there's a train coming. Very often you will just show like you've got your hero in a car that's stuck on the tracks of a train. The train is nowhere in sight. You cut to the train coming towards them. Now, it may be a while away, but by telling us that train is coming, you're building suspense so that eventually there's a satisfaction of everyone saying, when she shows up, boom, which is exactly what's going to happen 4 sequences later. Okay? So the way to picture that, the way to keep that in mind, I think, is in the outline. If you can keep it all in your head, you don't need an outline, cool, do that. You don't have to do it this way. This is just, for me, a nice clean way to do it. So, I call this, by the way, I tend to call this thing the scene list, just because that's what it is. It's the list of scenes. And like I said, if you really look at it, it would look like this. And if you do, like, honestly, there are ways right now, this is 14 point. If I was just looking at this on the computer for myself, if I wasn't trying to make it readable to you guys, I could probably get it down to 1 page. I would also probably mix some of these scenes up together. Like, yeah, there's some of these scenes where I could probably condense them and get it down. But ideally, the cool thing is if you can get your scene list to a page. That's really cool. Can't always do it, but something to think about. Okay, so then you have for yourself what I like to call the major moves. It's because there's no proper name for this. This is just sort of the sequences, the big section. And in that, you want to remember that in each of these, probably there have to be like intense points of this thing. These are not the set pieces. These are just the main sections of the story. And you got to keep the story in your head. You want to keep the story roughly shaped in your head so that you know when you go into the details and when you're fixing a line, you have some reason. You're keeping the characters and the story consistent. So that is the scene list, and I keep the major moves in the overview. The overview is where I pile all the theoretical stuff, character lists, themes. The overview is where I just all the stuff where if somebody wanted to talk to you about the big question of this, what is this character? I would be able to go to the overview and say, I forgot. I said that this character's main thing is that he has a foot fetish. This character's main thing is that he wants to, free the animals from the zoo. Whatever it is, I need to keep the center of that person in the overview. So that's what that is. Now let's go back to the outline. There we go. Because if you recall, we had gotten to, where is it? So far so good, which means from here on, I'm going to run into questions. And that is what we are doing here. I'm going to try and answer these questions. Now, when we meet Norman at the typewriter store, the last time when I first wrote it, hello, N. When I first wrote the typewriter store, I kind of pictured, actually, I pictured the repair person as this, sort of weird old person because it was an old technology, and I was kind of trying to clear that up. But as a result, I had in mind, I don't know if you remember in Toy Story, I think it's Toy Story, no, it's Toy Story 2. In Toy Story 2, I think they're restoring some toy that gets injured. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, is this little old guy with a toolbox and these fancy glasses, and that's who I had in mind. I realized that while that does establish the oldness of the technology, it weirdly skewed Norman into this whole old guy thing, which I really didn't want him to. I didn't want him to be out of it. I just wanted him to be somebody who used the typewriter as a way to say he's feeling the changes in society, because that's his main thing. His main thing is he is upset at the way that technology has changed society. That's why he's doing this whole sneaking into the serial killer group. It's one of many for his book. In case any of you don't remember that. And I can't imagine why you're not keeping every detail of this story in your heads. All right. Oh, let's see. The camera battery has died, so I'm trying to let it recharge a bit. And so I'm using the computer's crappy camera, which is why I'm going to keep myself down in this little circle. Anyway, the point is, when I rethought this character, and I thought, oh, it'd be more fun if it's kind of like a hipster shop owner, and Norman doesn't seem quite so out of it, I came up to this important point. Figure out the one use of this person. This is the thing. When you have a character, a one-scene character, what is the use? What is the point of this person? Why are we spending time introducing a dramatic encounter with this person? That's true of every person in the story, but especially when you get these little ones, who just have one bit and you're never going to see them again, probably. Who knows what will happen later in the series. This is an important question. Figure out the one use of this person, and almost always in terms of the main characters, the story. The main characters are where you get the story. So, what I thought is, oh, look at that. Natasha has, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat. Kitschy has shown Natasha whatever she needed as far as the famous trials. Cool. A website. All right. Sorry. Back to this this scene. What is the use of this person? The person, this whole scene is about meeting Norman, defining Norman. Just like when we met Madeline, we met her in her office to establish that she was comfortable, locked into her comfortable, safe routine. That was the purpose of the woman in the elevator. Now we have the same thing happening for Norman. We have a scene where we're meeting him and establishing his character. And the point of his character is, as I said, establish the book and journalism. That's it. That's all we need to get in here. Just that Norman is writing a book, that he is a believer in journalism, that his book is, we don't even know what the book's about yet. He's going to mention it. But that's it. All that we need here is to establish Norman as a retired newspaper journalist of the post-Watergate era who is writing a book. So he's a little 20th century, but he's not an antique himself. So I thought, how can this character show us that about Norman? And I thought they could be somebody who's like calling him. It's like saying, oh man, you're old, you're out of it. We don't do that anymore. But honestly, that argument is going to happen later with people in the group. That's going to happen especially with Xena. So I don't want to do that now. So I thought, what if it's the opposite? What if they actually like the past more than he does? What if they are more, let's all type on typewriters for the rest of our lives? And he's like, nah, that's no good. So what I thought was, if they romanticize the past, how can I show that? And I thought it'd be really funny if this person's like absolutely refuses to do anything digitally. So they're like, Norman's got to like buy, pay for the thing. And they're like, okay, hold on. And they have to write out the receipt by hand with a carbon paper. Many of you may not know what carbon paper is. It used to be this thing that you could make a copy of a written document by putting this paper underneath the paper you were writing on, and it would keep an imprint of the writing on the page underneath it. So it's called carbon paper. And for those of you who don't know that, you'll see it dramatized if they ever make this show. So now I've got this character. Oh, good. This is rewriting. You have to question every scene and character, and looking at the major moves is very helpful. I think, yes, great. But yeah, the main thing is like there's so many ways any scene can go. There are so many ways, and one of the biggest problems with, well, obviously you have carbon paper. There's photography and typewriters. I would think you would have carbon paper. Okay, actually, carbon paper isn't yellow. That's the receipt paper used to be yellow. The carbon paper is usually blue or purple or grayish. Anyway, so with every scene, one of the biggest flaws in amateur writing is that you start to not think, what is the purpose of this character? You just solve the problem in the moment. You just say, oh, this would be a cool moment. And then you get that moment like, oh, I need him to be angry. So he's angry. But you don't think, especially with the secondary characters, somebody like Dundosky or even Xena, making sure that they're consistent, that they have a single thing that they do, and they don't just do whatever you need in that scene. Yeah, okay, good. So there we go. That's the lesson of this story. Yeah, the gray, there's a gray and there was a blue, and a kind of purpley blue. Hey, Janae, good to see you. Glad you are here. Welcome. So we just solved this scene. So I'm going to move. Oh, wait. Let's move all of this. Now, the other thing that's going to happen in this typewriter store scene is that he is going to have to transition into the Zoom call. So one of the things I need to do is, in order to prevent, one of the big problems with writing is you have a scene, you get to the end of the scene, you have to end that scene, and you have to start a new scene. That is where people get exhausted. That is where the audience is like, please, every time you stop and start, it's hard for the audience to stay on the ride. So what you want to do is see where you can blend or involve each scene with the one to come, so that the scene interrupts it, or it's cutting to a different person and place entirely, because that doesn't feel like a stop and a start. If you've got one character who has to stop one interchange and start another, that's it's hard on the flow. So that's often why we cut between different characters instead of sticking with one character going blum, 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 because it's exhausting to stop and start a character's scenes. And by intercutting another character, you kind of don't feel it. That is a helpful tip. I hope you guys caught that one. That one's really useful. All right. Yes, 20th century technology. Well, that's the point. That's what we were trying to establish about Norman's character. Yes. You have to rewrite your final draft. Yeah, it's amazing. Um, I'm so glad I'm not typing my screenplay on a typewriter. That's right. Okay, so the point is, to get back to this scene, we want to get from this intro scene of Norman saying, no, I'm not, I don't want to work with 20th century technology entirely. I just have a sort of feel for it and it's fun for me. Whatever he's trying to say, we have to get right from that into the Zoom call. The way I wanted to do that was, instead of having him close out the deal with the typewriter guy and then pick up making the call and seeing the intro, I wanted to come in on the Zoom call late. Okay, that's important, because if he comes in late, we don't have to watch them starting. It's just like if you have a meeting in a scene, if you've got a scene and you like come in and like everyone shakes hands and sit down and says, okay, shall we talk? We're dead. We're so tired. We're exhausted. You really, the only time that works is, for instance, in The Godfather, when Sollozzo comes to meet with them, they show him coming in and everyone introducing themselves because it is the first time they have met, and there is a dramatic interplay happening as they meet. So that's, the story has started. Most of the time, like with this Zoom group, the beginning of the meeting is going to be, hi, hello, is everybody here? And then there's going to be Xena telling them stuff about George's death that we already saw. So we want to come in after all of that. So if Norman comes in late, we can do that. So I need a reason for Norman to come in late. And I thought, hey, it would be cool if there's a clock on the wall, and it turns out the clock is wrong because it's broken. So that he doesn't know what time it is because he didn't check. He saw the clock. And so he's actually late for the meeting. So that's another thing. If you can, use what you've got in more than one way. Like, oh, we're using a typewriter store to establish Norman because we want to establish him as somewhat begrudging of the new world. Oh, then we can also make some use out of the old technology of that store by having a clock be wrong. Use what you have. Oh, this is really a good one. Here. Use what you have is one of my videos, and it's really a good thing. If you've got a setting, if you've got a character, whatever you're doing, try and make use of that in some other way. Try to keep an eye on what you've got and say, how can I use that more than once? Because that provides the sort of hyper structured, hyper meaningful experience that the audience loves, even if it's just fake as heck. Editing and the start and stop is death. Yeah, man, the worst part of editing is getting people in and out of rooms. That's really tough. Okay. I really like making stuff like a really big sequence at the end of a long cut to another compilation of scenes. Yeah, if you can get away with that, that can get exhausting too. Anything you do over and over gets exhausting. Like if you've got a little two-person scene that's a long personal discussion, then you probably want to cut around to a lot of other characters or get out to a big crowd or have some action. Whatever you're doing, keep changing it up. The audience, just think we all get numb. It's like music. If you had the same rhythm going over and over with no break, no bridge, no change, it gets really hard to stick with it. Even disco doesn't do that. I am banning you. I don't know what your name is because it's in Cyrillic. Okay. So let's get to the next scene, the Zoom. Choose the final names to the group. I'm not going to waste our time on that. I will get to that later. I'm going to leave it in pink. So now we have the two more members, the high schooler and the conspiracy theorist. Is it a good time to start that? No, it is not. It is not a good time to start that. I'm going to put that off till our next pass. This is one of the things I can show you. This is one of those things they never teach you. You don't have to get it all right, like in order. You can say, oh, this part, I'm not in the right frame of mind to do that part right now. I will fix everything else, keep going, fix other things, I'll come back to it. You're allowed to do that. No one is keeping track of what order you do things in. No one is telling, I keep forgetting what camera I'm looking at here. No one is trying to say to you, you skipped that part. And we'll know later, the audience will know that, is it coming on? Am I here? No, it's dead. Battery, oh, there we go. Battery's good. No one knows how you build the ride. They only care that the ride works. No one knows what order you did things in or so. So if you're just like, I think if you know that you're going to go over it again, you're going to go through this outline time and time again. You're going to go over it and over it and over it. I think I actually have that as a slogan. Let me see. Here it is. Boom. You're going to go over it and over it and over it. So it's okay if sometimes you skip a piece because you'll get that the next time. That's all right. That's what we're doing now. Okay. I find that for people reading it, it keeps the forward momentum. Yes, with some time in between to breathe. Yes. Reading a 400-page script is hard even for me. Fair, good point. A 400-page script is probably best broken into several 90-page scripts, a bunch of 60-page scripts. Make it a series. All right. So now, this is too vague. Does something violent? And one of the questions I had was, I thought, this scene, it's a good feeling. We've had a lot of talk, but now we need something dark. We haven't shown the dark side, because the point about Dundosky is that he is both very noble and very scary. And I thought it's a cliche, really, to have some impulsively violent drug dealer. But I was using that cliche. I said, yeah, somebody blocks his car and he's like shoots up the place. But what I asked is, should he be violent? And that brought me to a very important thing. We need to fear him. The point of this scene is we need to fear him because he is going to convince Madeline. Okay, this is the point of the scene. The only purpose of this scene is to let us know that this guy who just said, I'm going to go get the papers from her, he's the kind of guy who can randomly, apparently, escalate to a 12 on the violence scale. So, this is the point of the scene. And then I said to myself, maybe he's awful, but not impulsive, because that's that cliche of the hair trigger drug dealer. It kind of bothered me. Also because it doesn't fit with the guy I have in mind, which is my favorite thing about Dundosky is that he is intent on justice, that he's actually kind of a noble guy. And so that raised the question, who is he? Because an impulsive nut job is not noble. So I answered the question. I said to myself, he's actually the only one. He is noble but scary. And this is what I thought was interesting. He's sort of the grown-up in the room, of which at first is like, nah, that doesn't make any sense. But actually, the idea that his violence is completely calculated, it is completely morally justified. That's really cool stuff, I think. So I took the time to think about his character. And now I am going to cut this and put it in the overview. Remember I told you when I have the character, I'm going to put it there. Yes, exactly. It can be, I mean, obviously anything can work if you make it work. But for me, what made this really cool was the idea that it was zeroing in on the center of his character, which is he knows how serious crime is, and he has an Old Testament sense of righteousness and punishment. So he's scary, not because he's a wacko, but because he is not. So I'm going to cut all this out now. I'm going to put it in the overview under his character, which is here. Just for now, I'm just going to leave it right there. Good. So then the question is, so exactly what does he do? He punishes someone who did wrong, and he does so calmly but brutally. Okay. And that, this other thing, yeah. I asked myself the question, where does his character go in the story? Like when we establish him as this particular type of person, in the big arc of the story, in the 6 questions, hold on, let me just remind you that there's a video about this. So if I know that what he wants is justice, and why can't he get it is because he can't find the right person. But then the last question is, where does it end? What happens? And what I want to use him for in the story is that he's going to be scary as hell, and he's going to get killed by Deakins, because that means Deakins is even more scary. That's the big point about Dundosky. So let's put that in here. There we go. See how that works? Good. All right. And with that, I'm going to so I'm just going to make this clear. He does violence, then leaves on mission. Now, this scene has a shape and a purpose, and that makes it, so far, so good. Look at that. Okay. So let me just quickly check on the, because we're getting towards the end of our session here. Yes, going backward and forward to the story. Something comes up, you go there, and then you go back. Exactly. That is very important. Sometimes people feel like they can't leave the track, but you're building the track. You can go anywhere. You can do anything you need to do. You do not have to rewrite or write from page 1 to page the end. You can do whatever you need to do, because you're going to come back and smooth it out. You're going to come back and fix the patches where you didn't quite get it right. That's okay. Cool, Hafid. I'm so glad to know that. Right to the white. E-coming style. Yes, that's true. You definitely want to leave some space on the page, which sometimes why it runs to 400. Okay. I read somewhere that the character of tone of a scene should end differently than the way it began. So, yeah. I would say mostly that's true, only because a scene is about something happening. Okay, guys, I'm gonna come out. Now, at any moment, my camera could die, and I apologize if that happens. But should a scene always end differently. I think differently, yes. Opposite, no. Um, that's really important. There is a sense of something happening in every scene. You want that. You want a sense that if they try to do something, it could be that they end up more of what they started. Something intensifies their feeling, or it could be that they get distracted and go off in another way. The main thing is that in every scene, they came into the scene wanting to do something. They, even if it's just I want to enjoy my dinner, whatever it is, they have something they want in a scene, almost always. And when that happens, something is going to happen during the scene. The reason we're watching this moment is because something's going to happen, which is either going to help them get that thing they want or prevent them from getting it. Whatever that is, that's going to make it different at the end. So I like to think of it as what happens in the scene to change things, not to make an arbitrary rule that you got to just switch things up, because that tends to make for arbitrary switches. The important thing is a character enters a scene with something that they are trying to do. Could even be something small. I am trying to support my friend as they get married. I am trying to be amused by my friends as they party. I am trying to get stoned and stare into space. Whatever it is, they're trying to do something in every scene. And that's the key, which leads you to, by the end of the scene, either they did it, or if they didn't do it, why not and what happens then? And that makes things different. Could he be like Luca Brasi? Not entirely, because Luca Brasi, yes, in some ways, but the main thing about Luca Brasi is he's doing it because he's ordered to. Dondosky is more like Don Vito, especially in part Godfather Part 2, when he's sort of like figuring out the right thing to do and doing what he has to do. Yes, exactly. N was ahead of me there. I just didn't read down far enough. And so with that triumphant solution to the question, I'm going to stop for today, and we're going to see you tomorrow. My battery should be charged by then. And in the meantime, go write something.